Good evening, everyone. How's it going? Very good. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you coming because you don't even know what I'm going to talk about. And you still came. Let's start the talk. Right, so the Inner Sunset Farmers Market, Garden for the Environment, neighborhood cleanups, and the Inner Sunset Park Neighbors itself. All very exciting initiatives which have happened recently or fairly recently in the Inner Sunset. All very local efforts. I'm sure you think they're great, but there's a reason, there are numerous reasons why I think these are very, very significant episodes for the neighborhood. And I actually think that for our future, we need to dramatically escalate the trends that these examples represent. And that trend is the local scale. So I want you to think about this as I'm talking about this, because I'm going to kind of go onto the global scale, and I want you to think the whole time, what does this talk have to do with the Inner Sunset? Why do these big things relate to us right here, right now in the County Fair building? The first thing, change. We are living in times of great change. Now, look at that, 1950 to 2000. Isn't that amazing? The original graph actually said McDonald's restaurants, but I thought restaurant, I don't think outlet maybe is better, right? It sounds more like a kind of pigsty or something. Telephones, motor vehicles, world population, loss of tropical rainforest and woodland, atmospheric concentration of CO2. And here are some other curves of different things that are going on right now. It's difficult for you to see because it's quite small. But look at all these curves. They're all kind of doing the same thing. They're all going up. And that's because we live in times of dramatic change. Here's another curve. Global oil production. So look at this again. From the early 1900s, practically nothing, way up to 2005, massive amounts of oil production. So why do I focus on oil in particular? Oil is everywhere. Everywhere. Oil can make tires, medicine, contact lenses, bottles, fertilizers, soap from England, toys, shoes, roof shingles, paint, bags, fuel. The list goes on and on and on. Here's a summary of the main uses of fuel. Transportation. Oil is actually a transportation thing, first and foremost. 55% of oil goes to transportation, and 95% of the world's transportation comes from oil. Food, fuel for the farm and supply vehicles and for the fertilizers. Energy, a third of it comes from oil. Plastics, drugs, asphalt, roof shingles, lubrication for engines, packaging. Electricity and heat, not so much, just under 2%. But I think looking at this, you'll realize that oil is absolutely everywhere in society. Everywhere. It underpins the very foundation of modern society. You'll notice earlier with the oil graph I showed you that I actually cut it off at 2005. I'm going to get to that in a second. Here's what oil demand is doing right now in light of everything that we're using oil for. It's gone up dramatically. And it's still rising. It's gone up since 2005. So I'm going to take you through the different layers of oil production. So the first level of oil production is an oil well, right? So here's an example, the North Sea oil well. You see, it goes up like this. It's reached a peak at about 1999, and it's gone down. In fact, if you draw that out, it still continues to go down. And this is actually called, it actually kind of looks like a bell curve. And this is common with all oil wells. What happens is that when oil comes out of the ground, you tap it, it explodes. It comes out for a while, it's going up and up and up. And then, the pressure starts leveling off, and then you start to get this kind of leveling out here. And then what happens, you've got to pump more water in, you've got to drill deeper and deeper and deeper. But eventually, no matter how much water you pump in and how hard you try and pump, the production of oil still goes down. You've actually seen this nationally. This is oil in the US. peaked in 1970 and has gone down ever since, and we've had to make up for it, as you can see there, with imports. Publicly available data. And globally, you see earlier I cut it off at 2005. What's it done since then? Well, you can see here we're at 2010, and it hasn't gone up since about 2008. But to fund the rising use of oil, we need that oil to keep going up. Now, obviously, we're at 2010, so all of this after that is a projection. So what this is a prediction of the way oil production is likely to go. What happens, you saw the bell curve earlier with the individual oil field. When you add up all those little bell curves, they actually form one giant bell curve. And the same thing applies on the international scale. The more oil that comes up, eventually the pressure goes down, you have to pump more, you get smaller and smaller fields, you have to explore more, you have to go deeper. The oil at the start is light and sweet, it becomes heavier, lower grade, the return of it becomes lower. You have to work harder and harder and harder, and eventually, no matter how hard you work, the oil production is going to go down no matter what you do. So we are right there at the cusp of oil production globally. You'll see here, production of oil actually was outpaced by, discovery was outpaced by production in the mid-80s. So here's some of the key evidences that we have indeed peaked. First of all, we haven't peaked in discovery since 62. Production outpaced discovery in 81. The more exploration we're doing, we're getting smaller and smaller discoveries. You've heard a lot about the Canadian tar sands. That's actually a really small amount of oil compared to, say, Saudi Arabia, but a lot has been made of it because, you know, it's big by the standards of the finds we're having today. And global production likely peaked in around 2008, hasn't gone up since then. So is this for real, right? If this is such a big thing, why haven't you heard people talk about it before? Well, Bill Clinton, globally, we may be at a point of peak oil production. A few weeks ago, Richard Branson in a report said, as we reach maximum oil extraction rates, the era of cheap oil is behind us. We must plan for a world in which oil prices are likely to be both higher and more volatile. Now, why isn't the Obama administration talking about it? Why didn't the Bush administration talk about it? The Secretary of Energy, Stephen Chu, this is a quote from an ex-colleague of his, David Fritley, up at Lawrence Berkeley National Labs. He says, Secretary of Energy Stephen Chu knows all about peak oil, but he can't talk about it. If the government announced that peak oil was threatening our economy, Wall Street would crash. He just can't say anything about it.